All right, moving along these conference tournament prediction and storyline videos. We've got the Big 12, we've got the ACC, the SEC, and the Big 10 all taken care of. And now I'm joined with Brandie to talk about the Big 12. We've got a lot of different storylines to look at here. Kansas, obviously, they've been underwhelming this season, and they find themselves in an odd spot outside of the top four range. Not really what you're looking at for Bill Self normally. Houston, they've dominated the conference all season long, the overall one seed over in the Big 12. But teams like Texas Tech, Arizona, and BYU look like they're up to the challenge of trying to take them down. So let's go ahead and get into this bracket and take a look. All right, Brandie, there's the bracket, the Big 12 tournament championship in Kansas City. Like I said, Houston, the number one seed, with Texas Tech and Arizona and BYU rounding out the top four. Iowa State over there at number 5. Kansas at 6, and then the rest of the teams, you see them there. Not going to go through them all. But, Brandie, before we get into our predictions and making our bracket and crowning the Full Court Traps Big 12 champions, what are just some overall storylines you're looking for in this conference? Some teams that maybe want to try and make a name for themselves, or maybe a team, not a whole lot of bubble teams in this league. I guess West Virginia would probably be the main one. Bubble teams that need to make some progress in this tournament to feel good heading into Selection Sunday. What stands out to you when we look at this upon first glance?
I think BYU stands out at first glance. Getting a double bye with the first year head coach for them is super impressive, and they've been on fire recently. So BYU, just in general, to me, is a team that is getting hot and has a lot of momentum at the right time. And then also just Houston coming into the Big 12 after coming from a mid-major conference, winning back-to-back Big 12 championships. Kelvin Sampson kind of proving the haters wrong. The beginning of the year, they got off to just a little bit of a rocky start when they started the year off. Kind of with 3 early season wins or 3 early season losses. And they really have not lost much at all since. So, been really impressed with Houston, obviously. And then for seeding wise, like people coming into this tournament that might need some help. I mean, Colorado, TCU, Arizona State, Kansas State, UCF, Utah, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma State are nowhere near the bubble. So if they could go on some kind of magical run and win the whole thing, that would be pretty cool. But maybe Baylor. But I don't really think at this point any of these teams can really do all that much to move their seed line at this point.
Yeah, I think upon first glance, I mean, obviously Kansas really sticks out just because you're not used to seeing them in that position. Usually, when it comes to the Big 12 and Bill Self, you're thinking best team in the conference, or at least in that top four realm. And we've made videos about this team. We've talked at length about their problems. We know the talent is on the roster. Is it the most interconnected at times? No. They look good last weekend, so maybe they go into this and make some kind of magical run. They definitely need to improve upon some seeding things going into the NCAA tournament. They're obviously safely in, but a lot of work to do if you want to find yourself in a little bit more of a favorable spot. I'm definitely going to have my eyes on West Virginia as well, with them being a firm bubble team. You got to make some noise in this tournament if you're a Mountaineers fan. Iowa State as well, they really intrigued me at that 5 spot, because I think when that team is really firing on all cylinders, they could go through and potentially win this thing if things go the right way. And like you said, BYU being top 4 in the first year under Kevin Young, really impressive as well. Looking to see if Houston keeps up their dominance in the conference and goes on and wins this thing. But there's a lot to look forward to when it comes to the Big 12. Lots of exciting prospects. And we'll go ahead and get started and get these predictions in, see how accurate we are upon the end of the week when we're looking at Saturday and crowning a champion. So we'll start. First round action begins on Tuesday. Cincinnati versus Oklahoma State. Brandie, basically the way this is going to work, with it just being us two, is we'll pick our winners. If we're split on something, one of us, we have the ability to use a trump card, so to speak, over the other, put one team in that we really want to see, and then it'll just go back and forth like that. But Cincinnati and Oklahoma State, who do we have in this first round matchup?
I'm going with Cincinnati based off of just pure talent that's on that roster over what Oklahoma State has.
Yeah, I agree there. Not really anything to debate. Cincinnati. I think that they're a team that where are they on the bubble right now exactly? Are they anywhere close? Because I feel like they might have been in bubble talks and kind of worked themselves out lately. I'm not 100% certain on that.
Um, I don't think that they're on the bubble right now, but I have
Hmm.
bracket matrix pulled up Yeah, they're not on the bubble right now.
Yeah.
So
I know they were in talks for it a little bit, but they kind of pushed themselves out by struggling a lot in Big 12.
yeah, yeah, there's no chance of them making the tournament, I think, unless they win it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, they've fallen off quite a bit. But moving forward, Colorado versus TCU. I'll go ahead and say TCU gets this one done. We've seen them be able to go up against some of the better competition in the conference and at least compete. They've pulled an upset win or two there. I think they get at least one win in this tournament. What about you?
yeah, I think TCU probably this is probably my least exciting game, I think,
Hmm.
of the start of this. I mean, we know that Colorado beat UConn to start the season off with, but they got 3 wins in conference play. Really bad.
Hmm.
Really bad. One of their wins though was TCU that they did just get 2 days ago. So
Yep.
maybe a little bit of a revenge factor there for TCU, but I tend to lean more TCU than I do Colorado here. I mean, there's really just not a lot to write home about either of these teams, but you just can't ignore how poor of a conference season that Colorado had.
Yeah, in terms of the least inspiring matchups of this tournament, I think without a doubt it probably lies here or maybe in this next one we're about to talk about with Arizona and K-State. But yeah, Colorado, I mean, they had their moment in Maui, and ever since then they've really kind of been non-existent, to be quite frank. But moving on down the list, Arizona State versus K-State. Does Jerome Tang have a special run built in him with all that NIL money they spent on the likes of Coleman Hawkins? Obviously, this year has been a disaster for them compared to what they were hoping for. Do we think that he has a little bit of March magic to start a run in the Big 12?
Um, I don't know if he does. I mean, yeah, he has talent on his team with Coleman Hawkins and Doug McDaniel, but I'm just not super impressed with this team. Not really inspired, but also I'm not really like inspired by Arizona State either. Um, and Arizona State is just like continues to trend in the wrong direction. So
Yep.
I think I'm gonna go with Jerome Tank here. Even though I do love Jaden Quintus for Arizona State, I think he's an awesome defensive player and has really come into his own on offense too. Really excited to hopefully see him play for more of a contending team next year, assuming he does enter the portal. But yeah, I gotta go with the Fighting Jerome Tanks in this one.
Yeah, you see me writing it in. I'm not going to push back on that one. I'm not very inspired by Arizona State, but hey, Jaden Quaintance, he's going to be on the portal watch list for a lot of schools. I think that he's going to land somewhere pretty nice that might be able to feature him a little bit more next year. But lastly, to cap out the first round, UCF versus Utah. Are we going with the Utes here or the Golden Knights of UCF?
I'm gonna go with the Utes here. Obviously their coach has already been fired this year, but I think that kind of inspires a team like this to want to get up and play for their coach that got fired because it didn't seem like a lot of players were pretty, happy with that firing. And I do like Gabe Badston for them, and Ezra Asar too. So I kind of like Utah in this spot. What do you think?
I like Utah because I want to see that matchup against Kansas again. We know what Utah did a couple of weeks ago against them at home. Obviously, Kansas, that was one of their worst performances of the year. Really kind of sparked a lot of debate about this Kansas team and what exactly they're capable of doing. I think it's going to set up a potential get back spot for them. And Utah, I just think overall is better than UCF as a whole. Not really a whole lot to break down there. I think in this next round, Cincinnati and Iowa State to kick off Wednesday, there's not going to be a whole lot to break down here either because I think Iowa State's going to cruise to victory.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah,
I think
and
I mean, their defense is just it's just too good and it's going to be too overpowering. And they had a little bit of a skid there, kind of mid to late season, but I feel like they finally bounced back and started playing the type of basketball they were playing in non-conference and to start off the conference play with. So I like it.
TCU versus West Virginia. This one's kind of intriguing. This is a game that West Virginia really has to have for their bubble hopes and hoping to kind of make themselves end up on the safe side of the bubble. Do we think they get it done against the Horned Frogs? I'm thinking this is a game where Javon Small has a little bit of a masterclass, and they at least get one game to hang their hat on in the Big 12.
Yeah, this team is still a top 15 team defensively. West Virginia is, so I could see them causing a little bit of havoc here. Also, it's kind of interesting to point out TCU is a top 32 team defensively. So I'm not really sure if we're going to see a ton of offense in this game. Could be just a really fun back and forth, kind of hard nosed rock battle. And so I got to go with West Virginia though. And
Mm-hmm.
I like Yvonne Small, and I like their guards a little bit. Still remember those games in early season non-conference play when they pulled off that win against Gonzaga. This team has what it takes to be able to win a big game. And I feel like any game in this tournament for a team like West Virginia right now is a big game. So,
Oh yeah, 100%. I'm rolling with you here. I think West Virginia gets it done. A lot of agreement across the board for us so far. So we'll see how this continues to take shape. K-State versus Baylor. Kind of an intriguing matchup, but at the same time, I could also see Baylor cruising just because they have more talent. Obviously, they've underwhelmed this year, but I mean, when you've got an NBA prospect with VJ Edgecombe on the other side and a guy like Robert Wright who can be electric, I think that they're going to be able to take this one. Now, will they go further than that? I don't know if I necessarily bet on it. We'll get on that here in a bit, but I think they at least take care of business against K-State and that single bye that they're getting.
yeah, I agree with you in total
Mm-hmm.
and everything there.
Yeah, not really a whole lot in these early matchups to necessarily break down, it seems. But Utah and Kansas, the rematch. Does Kansas get their revenge?
I am going to go with yes.
Mm-hmm.
We feel like we've probably been pretty hard, as have most people in the country, on this Kansas team just because they were preseason number one. But I was impressed with their home senior night win over Arizona this past weekend. I feel like that was one of the best games that Hunter Dickinson has had in a uniform at Kansas. And that is really what they needed as a veteran leader to step up. And he did that. I thought Zeke Mayo also had a nice bounce back game too Saturday. So I like what I saw from Kansas. Honestly, the past 2.5 weeks, as weird as that sounds, even though they've lost a couple of games in there, they were close games, and at least the team looked like they were engaged and like they cared. Kind of unlike some of those other losses that we'd seen them have this year. So I'm going with Kansas in a revenge spot here.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, you see, I already wrote it in. Kansas, the better team. They really shouldn't have lost that first time around against Utah over there. And I think they're easily going to get their lick back here. This could probably get out of hand, in my opinion, but we'll see. Iowa State, BYU to kick off our quarterfinal matchups here. This one, I really like this matchup. This is going to be a very intriguing matchup if it comes to fruition. Kevin Young, obviously, the phenomenal job he's done at BYU. Richie Saunders, he's been looking like an exceptional player recently. He's been on a really solid run of play. And Iowa State, they've been dealing with a lot of injury-related issues throughout Big 12 play. They went without Curtis Jones and Keshawn Gilbert at times. Milan Momcilovic, he was also out for periods as well. But I believe going into the Big 12 tournament, they should be fully healthy. I haven't looked at the latest injury reports when it comes to them, but I haven't heard of anything major. So, what do we think about the Cyclones versus the Cougars here?
Yeah, this is going to be a super fun game. BYU has a really fun offense that they run, and Iowa State's defense has been incredible this season. Um, And when they matched up in the regular season, this game went into double overtime, and BYU ended up winning that. BYU's also on, I think, an 8-game win streak right now, or something like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they're they're rolling, and they haven't necessarily finished out this season too easily. I mean, they played Iowa State to finish out the season, and Kansas and Arizona a couple weeks ago. So they've played some decent teams, and that's part of what's going into this win streak and why I'm so high on this team. I really like the tempo that they play at too. I think I'm gonna have to go with BYU here in an upset. I just feel like, they're rolling right now, and sometimes that's what March is all about in spots like this. And Iowa State towards the end of the year and middle of the season has just kind of been so up and down. Feel like sometimes you just don't know what you're gonna get out of this Iowa State offense. So I like the Mormons here.
I think this is where our first disagreement's going to come because I like Iowa State in this spot. I mean, I've been carrying the torch for Iowa State since the preseason that I think this team's Final Four good. They've dealt with their injuries and their inconsistencies, obviously, but I think now is as good a time as ever to get things turned around. And I feel like Otzelberger's going to have them ready to go in postseason play. So this is where the trump card's going to come into effect here. Do you want to use yours right now to force BYU through? And we'll make that the official pick of the trap.
No, I don't
You going to
because of
save it?
how. Yeah, I'll save it
Okay.
because
Okay.
that first game, that game they played this regular season was so electric. This really, to me, is more of a toss-up type of game. I think we're gonna be in for another incredible matchup. So I don't want to use it. I don't feel fully confident in
Okay.
them enough to use it. And I do love this Iowa State team still. And like you said, they have gotten healthy and been playing better since that. So not yet.
Yeah.
Not ready to use
Okay.
it yet.
Okay. We're not seeing the trump card come out just yet. We'll see if that continues to stay true the rest of the way. This one I think is going to be fairly easy, Brandie. Houston versus West Virginia. Give me Houston by a lot.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I've been singing the praises of this Houston team now, I think for like 3 or 4 weeks. And yeah, they're going to be a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. They're playing their best brand of basketball right now, it feels like, and have been now for months. Just Kelvin Sampson defenses. And they've, found some scorers on offense as the season's gone on. So love this Houston team.
I think the last month I saw it was on Bart Torvik. They're maybe second in the country behind Duke, I think, in terms of overall rankings. That sound right? Because I'm pretty sure I did see that the other day.
That sounds right.
Yeah, I don't want to throw just facts out there into the ether without having a basis behind them, but I'm pretty sure they have been up there, and they are one of the best teams in the country. I mean, they're looking prime for a 1 seed. Regardless of what happens here, I think they do actually end up with the 1 seed, depending on the other results in the other conferences where those 1 seeds are competing at. You could see them maybe make a run to like the second overall 1 seed, or maybe that third or fourth overall 1 seed might be what's most realistic for them right now. But I don't envision West Virginia giving any problems to this Houston team. And I would imagine, Brandie, if West Virginia is not able to pull off this win, I don't think a win against TCU is going to be enough to get them off the bubble.
I don't think so either. I think I think they have to win the whole thing.
Probably, yeah, because I think as of now they're kind of on that next 4 out, last 4 out kind of territory. They're not really on the best side of it right now. So there's definitely some work to do. But moving forward, Baylor and Texas Tech. This is an intriguing matchup, I think. I could see this one being a little bit frisky for Texas Tech. You got the double bye, but you've got a Baylor team that in this scenario we think takes care of business against K-State. Feeling good about themselves. They've got the talent, obviously. Scott Drew hasn't really been able to get it all together consistently at points this season, but I mean, we've seen them come down from 20 against a Kansas team that has the talent as well and win that kind of game, and we've seen them in times look like a pretty decent team, but there's also been a little bit more cons with them as well this year. So Baylor, Texas Tech, do we think the Red Raiders handle their business?
I think so.
Yeah.
I will say as of late, like Baylor has, been I don't know, this Baylor team to me is all over the place. They have so much talent and there's so many questions around like why are they not winning the amount of games that they should be winning? And so Texas Tech has Big 12 Player of the Year that just got announced today, JT Toppin, and they're just a more well-balanced team than Baylor is. They have a top 10 offense and they have a top 25 defense. So, they match up pretty well against most people. They're really explosive too, and they run a fast-paced offense. So I like Texas Tech, and I'm a big Grant McCaslin fan too. He's probably
Yeah.
one of my favorite coaches.
Yeah, he's done a great job with them, obviously. And I mean, you see, I've wrote him in already. I agree with you. I think Texas Tech gets this done. JT Toppin, I mean, he's just phenomenal all season long. He's won the Player of the Year in the Big 12, rightfully so. And I think that they're going to keep rolling through this one and set up a matchup against the winner of the next game, Kansas and Arizona, a rematch of the regular season finale. Do we think Arizona gets revenge against the Jayhawks?
It's tough to turn around and play a team that you just played and beat them, but I do think that this Kansas team matches up well with Arizona. Arizona, they have a decent offense, but Kansas, one of the best things that they've had all year is their defense. It's what allowed them to stay in that game late with Houston that just happened last week. And it's kind of what's been the saving grace of their season, for just, being a better seed than what could be. I'm going Kansas with this one. I think that they get it done against this Arizona team, and I think that their veterans on their team lock in here, and they have I think that they have a chip on their shoulder too. They know so many people are doubting them going into the NCAA tournament and going into this tournament, and nobody's talking about anything positive when it relates to Kansas basketball right now. When you hear Big 12, all you're hearing really is Houston, Iowa State, and BYU and Texas Tech. And nobody's talking about what Kansas may or may not be able to do. And they've had a more than disappointing season compared to what expectations were, but there is still talent in this roster. And I still do think these players are bought into this team and what could be.
We're on the same page. I think Kansas gets the upset as well. Like you said, they match up well against Arizona. They've got their number in the most recent matchup, and I think that kind of favors them. They're going to know what they want to get to. And, I mean, Bill Self, you can never bet against him in March because, I mean, even though things haven't really pieced together well, he's still one of the best coaches in our sport, and he's more than capable of getting this team together. And another underrated factor of this too, Brandie, is this is in Kansas City.
Kansas City.
Kansas fans are going to flood that arena for this game.
Absolutely. They definitely should have home court advantage for the most part in this.
Yeah, I don't know how Arizona fans travel. I mean, they're new to the Big 12. They may travel well for this, but, I mean, Kansas being so geographically close, I think that crowd is going to really get behind them and try and pull them through in this one. And to be honest with you, I think this conference tournament means more to them than it does Arizona because as of today, I think most predictions kind of have Kansas around the 7 seed range. And if you're looking to work your way up into maybe like a 6 or possibly even a 5 if some things crumble the right way ahead of you with other teams, it's got to start with picking up some signature wins in this tournament, I would imagine.
Right.
Yeah, I like that pick. I think we're going to get that one right. I hope so, at least. Wouldn't it be something, though, if Utah just went out and said, screw you guys, and just beat them in round 1 or the second round game?
That would be crazy. I love a good Cinderella story. So if we're wrong because of that, then, hey, I can live with that.
I was going to say Utah has a chance to really break this bracket wide open for us, at least our version of it. But getting into the semifinals, Iowa State and Houston. This would be a phenomenal matchup if we were to get it. And I think that this one, it's really a battle of two teams that are extremely defensive-centric programs. I mean, they get after it on the defensive end, but they've also got the shot makers too. I mean, Houston, you've got guys like Emmanuel Sharp, Milo Zuzan, Jawan Roberts in the paint, and then on the Iowa State side of things, Kashawn Gilbert, Curtis Jones, and then in the front court you got a guy like Milan Momcilovic. I really think this has a chance to be an outstanding Big 12 basketball game.
I do too, for all of the reasons that you just said, and a lot of players on these teams are older too, so both are very highly experienced rosters, which plays a part in March anytime. Experience takes you far usually, so almost every single starter besides Tugler for Houston is a junior or senior. So this is going to be a rock battle, and I really do hope that we get this matchup because I really enjoyed the first time that these two teams played. They only played each other once in conference play, but I really enjoyed it. I think it could have been a little bit closer than what it did end up being. It was still a single-digit loss for Iowa State, but it was still a really fun basketball game, and of course it was low scoring. So I'm excited for this one. I hope that we get it.
Yeah, and when it comes to a winner, I mean, what are you feeling in this one? I'm still kind of mulling my decision over, so I'll let you take the lead first. What do you think?
I think I have to go with Houston here. Houston has had one loss since November 30th, and that one loss was to Texas Tech in overtime by 1 point. It really does not get more elite than that, I feel like. And this team is just on another level defensively. They wear you down, and there's a reason they're a 1 seed. And I think that they have the best coach in the conference too. So I'm gonna have to go with Houston here.
Yeah, I think Iowa State matches up well against Houston. I think that they could definitely pose a challenge, but when Houston's playing as good as they have been recently, it just makes it really hard for me to bet against them. I want to go with Iowa State just because I've been such a big fan of theirs all season long. When we were talking preseason Final Four teams, I mentioned Iowa State as one of my choices. And if they get the right kind of draw, I think they could do that. But I don't think that they're going to be able to knock off Houston here. But I do think when it comes to if Iowa State and BYU ultimately is that matchup over there in the quarters, I think Iowa State matches up a little bit better against Houston than BYU would, don't you think?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like if Houston got BYU, they could kind of just overwhelm them in what they try to do. Whereas Iowa State, I feel like they're more just kind of apt to be able to play at that kind of style that Houston likes to get into. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, BYU's been phenomenal, but I just feel like Iowa State would have a better kind of puncher's chance in this matchup.
Yeah. I it's tough, but I think I tend to agree with you. I'm like
Mm-hmm.
trying to find things not to just like simply agree with you on, but it's hard because you're right. Like
Hey, this is a Ball Knowers podcast. We're on the same page. That's a good thing
True.
here. But we'll keep the train rolling into the other semifinal matchup we got. Texas Tech against a Kansas team that in this scenario would have just pulled off an upset against Arizona. Brandie, do we think Bill Self has another one up his sleeve?
Um, Look, they're gonna have another extra game played more than Texas Tech. So that's a little bit worrisome here in this spot. Already a team that has been disappointing, and but I don't know. They're gonna have the home crowd, and Texas Tech. They've been really good this season, but they have some bad losses too. I mean, this Texas Tech team lost to UCF, and they had a recent loss in early February or mid-February to TCU. So I. I think I'm gonna go with Kansas here. I just feel like not enough people are talking about them, even though they haven't been good this year for their standards and for what the preseason expectations were. I just saw fire in them on Saturday that I haven't seen in them all season, and I don't know if that was just senior night emotions. But even in his post game press conference, Bill Self had mentioned how you know that to him, that senior night, he said that game felt like the most important game almost in like his history of any of the teams that he's had for whatever reason, because of how much he said that team has just labored through this year, whatever that means. Maybe it's a little bit of self adversity that they faced, but they've gone through some stuff, and I really do think that they're still obviously a very talented team that's just like maybe a little bit poorly constructed, but I think that they're going to find a way to win this game against Texas Tech if they end up in this spot. There's something about being in the home crowd, and there's something about the emotions that we saw in that game on Saturday. I don't know. I think that is what it comes down to for me. It'll be an interesting matchup inside between JT Toppin and Hunter Dickinson, but I honestly think Hunter might end up being, at least on the offensive side for JT, on the defensive side for Hunter. I think that's a little bit of a mismatch for JT. So
Yeah. That's definitely an intriguing battle there, JT and Hunter. If Hunter plays the way he did against Arizona in the regular season finale, Kansas could roll through and win this thing. Because if they get going like that and they get that type of performance out of him, I mean, they can compete with anybody in this conference. But this is such a tough one. All the reasons you gave for Kansas, I see the logic behind it. You know, the home court, they're fired up at the right time, but at the same time, I like this Texas Tech team so much. It just makes it hard for me to pick again. I think I'm going to go Texas Tech here, but you have the opportunity to force Kansas through if you really want to see this happen. I won't be upset about it.
uh um I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do
Okay.
it. I
All
hope I
right.
don't make me regret this, Kansas.
Okay. Kansas, you heard it here first. Brandy's putting them through to the final. The full court trap is taking the Kansas Jayhawks to meet in the final against the Houston Cougars. Now, this would be a great matchup, I think, just from storylines. Obviously, you've got Houston, who's really taken over the Big 12, versus a Kansas program that in years past has been the just sole dominating team in the Big 12. So, kind of a almost not really a new blood versus old blood kind of thing, because Houston has been pretty relevant ever since Kelvin Sampson got in there. But just over these last couple of years, Houston's really started to become more dominant. And yeah, I mean, there's nothing not to love about these storylines here, Brandy, and this kind of final that we have presented here by the full court traps prediction metrics.
Yeah, I mean, I watched that first matchup against them in regular season, and honestly, there were moments where Kansas could have won that game against Houston. Um, it was really good back and forth until I guess probably the last 3 to 4 minutes or so of it. Really, Kansas just has struggled closing out games and closing out important games, it seems like. Um, I like hate going chalk, but it's hard for me to pick somebody that's not Houston to win this tournament. Like they're just on a level that a lot of these other teams are on. They don't have like a really bad loss sticking out on their resume. And if they do, if you want to make a claim that they do, like it was from November, like, and they don't, like, at least I don't think San Diego State's that big of a loss. So, um, yeah, 3 of their 4 losses, by the way, are all in overtime. So,
Yeah.
yeah, this Houston team to me is like really special, and I think they have the best defensive player in the country in Tugler. And I'm not really sure how Kansas scores in this game. Their guards have been a little bit shaky all season, and they're gonna have to find ways to score that aren't in the paint, I think, and that might be a little bit tough for them. So I'm going Houston.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Houston gets it. If Houston did meet Texas Tech in another hypothetical, I think that maybe there'd be a little bit more to think about in terms of that matchup. But with Kansas, I don't know. It's like you said, I just kind of wonder how they're going to be able to get scoring out of this team when they're going up against such a stout defense like Houston. And I mean, the first time around, Kansas really just blew a chance to really get Houston there. I mean, twice they had a 6 point lead to close out the game in regulation and overtime, and they let it slip. So, and that was at Allen Fieldhouse as well. So, it kind of makes you wonder if they'll be able to pull off that same kind of intensity and effort in a neutral site. But yeah, Houston, they've been the best team in the Big 12 all season long. They haven't had a bad loss, and like you said, it's been forever now, and they've been on such a run of dominance throughout the Big 12, just barely taking any hiccups on their resume, looking like the best team in the Big 12 and one of the best teams in the country while doing it. I think they put their stamp on this phenomenal season and close it out with a conference tournament title in Kansas City. But looking at the bracket as it's finalized, Brandy, I like what we cooked up here. I think it looks pretty solid. What about you?
I think so too. I did just realize Houston beat Kansas twice in the regular season, and it
Yeah.
may be a little bit difficult to beat a team 3 times. So just wanted to point that out. That's something to think about when your viewers are building their conference brackets. I like it though. I think I like it. Maybe
Yeah.
Texas Tech and Kansas might be where, maybe it was a bad idea to use my trump card there, but I like it. I
Hmm.
would not be surprised if this Kansas team rallies behind the crowd that they'll have there.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it's realistic. I'm not mad about that trump card being used because if there was kind of an upset to see happen when it comes to Texas Tech, I don't think Baylor gets it, but I do think that Kansas would be more than capable of being able to snag it. But yeah, there it is in all of its glory. The full court traps Big 12 bracket prediction. Copy it down, memorize it, get it ingrained in your brain. We'll see how well we do on our predictions. But yeah, that's another major conference tournament in the book with the Full Court Trap podcast, crowning Houston your Big 12 conference tournament champions.